Oh, I'm sick as hell. But I imagine we're just gonna edit it anyway. Yes, hello out there to my internet fam. I love the part. Uh, I'm looking at the other screen right now where Spathywah just says Jubird just makes up shit all the time, and Jubird says, "Are you suggesting I'm being untruthful on IRC?" Wow. And this is after Jubird called him Spathy WhatsApp. Somebody say hi to Lek for me in the IRC chat if you can. Oh, yeah, I'm hoiting. We're further than I thought because I don't think we needed to re-edit that guy. Yeah, so we're actually at chapter 84. Yeah, I want to get a lot of work done today, but as you can tell, I'm not feeling super well. So we're gonna see how lucid I am for the editing. If this is indeed the novel coronavirus, yeah, tell Lek I'm on a stream at the moment. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Lek. He's our Habibi and a true Imam. All right. But yeah, I apologize in advance for sounding all stuffed up. Unfortunately, there's not a lot I can do about it without, dying. And good God. All right. So we said we're at page 657, but actually we're at page 660. So we're much further to go. Yes, hello to the internet. I'm Zach ZYZ. This is my 8th novel. We've been editing for 65 days straight. Is it 60? Yeah, yesterday was 64. So editing at about 10 pages per day. So yeah, and I've promised that I will not quit until about 2 weeks from now, when we will hopefully have completed. It might take a little bit longer. We might wind up rewriting some of those later chapters. Lek is saying, "Lol, I lost weight." That's true. I've lost about 3 pounds in the last, I don't know, month or so. But that's within like water variation and so forth. In 2 or 3 months, I'll have lost some substantial weight because I'm back on a reasonable diet for a little bit. Because I'm gonna have to start shilling this book and potentially prostituting myself to pay for the editing. I sure hope my parents are not watching on that one. But it's all fun and games. Helps me learn more about diversity. It's not really. It's not really part of my game plan. I might run. I might run like some kind of huge crowdfunding campaign, and by huge I mean small and sad. If we can't get this published within like a year or so, because I really think it's a good story. Um, but Lord have mercy. All right, so this is page number 84, and I can think of nothing better to do than to begin editing. Oh, what do we have here? This is a new user, xcutesy, who says hi, and she's so happy about it, or he's so happy about it, that there is an extra parentheses underneath of the smiley. So that's true happiness right there. Hope to find some someday myself. All right. So words came after. Sorry, chapter 84. Words came out of Mrs. Diner's mouth, distantly tinged with things Freya ought to know about social studies. They were distantly tinged with things Freya ought to know about social studies, but there was no room in her head for anything outside. Everything was melting. Oh, yeah. This is, wow. This is really like not a great paragraph. Oh wait, some breaking news. Uh, my writing is amazing. Well, terrible. I mean, the volume of it is amazing, but this is not a a good intro chapter or paragraph. So we're gonna work on it there. Breaking, man doesn't do his regularly scheduled terrorizing of Denver due to an infection of his vet. We never terrorized Denver. I was always super friendly to those people. You know, like tough love, but I would hardly call it terrorizing. And besides, we moved off of fucking Denver. Look at Jira being a mean girl with Juber doing the bye bitch with hands clapping and so forth. All right, let's try and fix this paragraph. Words came. Words came out of Mr. Diner's mouth, Miss Diner's mouth, distantly tinged with things Freya ought to know about social studies. There was no room in her head for anything else. She was having a silent meltdown. Desiccated air rasped from the vents. Uh, whew. Yeah, we were really laying it on thick in this paragraph. Okay, forgive me a moment. I'll be right back. God. Well, boys, I think I missed my calling. I should have been a human trumpet. Ugh, that's awful. So Jiro says, "Man, you know that feeling where you just stay still, real still, and let the snot fall out of you, wishing that on you." No, I don't. Do you mean that in a positive way, or you just want me to be more congested? Because I don't need any of your curses this morning, Jira. But maybe you're talking about like the moment where um, you're you just become decongested all at once and you feel better. Yeah. Well, in that case, thank you. Because yeah, I'm not down with being hexed. But wait, say it on the screen. Mm. Pressure was building behind her eyes like her mind was about to boil over. And in her pocket, the starball was a searing note of activity. Yeah, searing. Was searing with activity. Oh, God damn it. I don't think we get to put in the desiccate. Freya squirmed in her seat to get the orb away from her skin. It was working overtime on whatever the hell it did all day. Not talking to her, not explaining itself, not making her one with her beloved. Nothing worth selling her mother for. Freya felt so alone and apart. She was frowning so hard as she willed the unity. She couldn't keep the turmoil bottled. Miss Diner noticed her expression and stopped to ask if she was all right. Freya hurriedly tried to pull from what she'd been saying earlier. Freya hurriedly tried to pull an excuse from the bits of lesson that had leaked through her internal monologue. How many times did you wind up doing this in class? Like you're just fucking zoned out, and the teacher rolls up to you, and you're like, "Quick, scroll back." Um, and one of the things I really like is that, like when you just get it right, like you're a million miles distant, but then you repeat exactly what they just said out of like some weird buffer that's running all the time in your head. Like when I was doing fucking I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about much of this, but when I was doing like cryptography work in and language learning shit, where you're just like remembering these spoken strings of numbers. One thing that I noticed was like I could see a string of numbers and remember it for, like you find out like how many seconds you can remember how many numbers for. And I didn't have like an especially good visual memory, but for things that were spoken aloud, I could retain them for 3 or 4 times as long, like 30 seconds, while people were like beating me with a sock or something like that after I had heard them spoken aloud or said them aloud. If I actually say the words, I can remember them for much longer. And you'll see that sometimes on the other radio show where I'll be trying to remember things that have happened in the past, and like you can see that my memory for audio is better than my memory for visual, which is tough since everything we're doing here is visual at the moment. Though, Samsung TV says that this book is lacking diversity. Yeah, it really, there is one. Let's count the number of black characters in this book. There is a guy that used to be Riley, but we changed his name, so that's one. There is her guitar teacher, Mr. Mathis, two. There are the members of Mr. Mathis's band. They sort of all collectively count as one character because they have so few lines of dialogue. We can presume that Tamika Dowd and Patricia Dowd are probably black just by their names, but there is no indication in the text of any kind of race. And one of the things that I'm probably going to do is we'll probably go back and cut out the part where it says, it might say something about the color of either Mr. Mathis or of the people during the scene at the Swallow Hall. And I think we're going to go out and take out any kind of commentary on complexion or skin color or whatever, because this whole book is just as white as can be, right? All these characters are white as the driven snow, and like there's no point at trying to include any kind of meaningful diversity or something. This is like rural Maine that we're talking about right here. There is nobody but white people out there. White people and heroin, and that's it. In fact, one of the unrealistic things about the story is that heroin doesn't really play a factor in this book, and we're talking about rural Maine. What are we doing there? But what do we got here? We've got Stiggy Man. So I have seen your book a few times scrolling by, and I have to ask, why is the book titled Pregnant in Danish? Well, you'll have to read through to find out why. But I will tell you that in English, gravid is also a word that means pregnant, but it has a different connotation in English. In English, it is a word that we would use to describe an animal, like a sturgeon or a spider that was full of eggs, or maybe a pig or something like that. You would almost never describe a human female with gravid, because it would be like a little insulting, a little bit like comparing them to an animal. Yeah, like maybe it has to do with gravity. We're only 2 letters away from gravity. Maybe it has to do with Gravlox. I don't know. Maybe she has a pet spider at some point in this thing. We'll really have to find out. But yeah, it's not like a decision that we just made lightly. It's also a name that a publisher might change. There's an existing book called Gravid on Amazon, and it's just pregnancy porn. Whether or not you feel like this book is pregnancy porn is up to you. But yeah, I'm a big fan of book titles that are just like a single hard-hitting word. Because it's just like I don't have to say a whole fucking sentence every time that we're talking about it. One of my other books is entitled Lemon, Maybe, and the Electric Lady, which is that's a lot to take on right there. All right, hold on. I need to see this chat from my enemies right here. Oh, they're DDoSing Jubird. I don't support packet pussies. Just FYI, I don't like DDoSing, but it is kind of funny that Bird's getting hammered. It's his own fault. When I say it, it sounds like gravel, and now I have the Minecraft soundtrack going in my head. So if you like Minecraft, my very, very first book called Survival Mode was written as sort of a science fiction version of Minecraft set on an alien moon. Um, and it was meant to be like a backstory for my friend's Minecraft knockoff, which was at the time named Mooncraft, but he had to change it because he got like copyright trouble and like they thought it was racist and so forth. Um, but uh, but yeah, if you go on zachzyz.com, you'll see it scrolling at some point here if enough people say enough stuff in Twitter. Oh, it just said it in it says free books. Yeah, the ebook is there, and it's actually like a fun read. It's only like 80 pages long instead of 800. Name it close to another book for the mistake shekels. No, I like GRAVID. I'm sticking with that unless a publisher is like about our title here, Zach. You know, because like I like our fucking logo that I've made here. I think that looks amazing. And hold on, if we go to uh, let's take a look at our temporary cover that I made for this book. Yeah, look at this. This is not. Yeah, yeah, I like this whole thing. I like the contrast of light and dark there. It's a pretty decent title or cover. Like I would not be ashamed to take that to market. This is just a throw up though. So yeah, yeah. One thing that we would probably change is like this orb that you see right here. I'd make it like a little bit more complex. Probably have like a bunch of crazy swastikas and stuff happening. And I'm just kidding. I don't think we can get away with having a bunch of crazy swastikas there. Um, but yeah, that's that. All right, what do we got here? So Lemon Maybe and the Electric Lady sounds like a parody on Do Androids Dream on that. So that's one that I haven't. It's completed, but I haven't been able to get it published, and I probably need to rewrite it because I'm not happy with the antagonist in that book. But that one is really dope. It's set at a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen, and all these drunks start to get superpowers out of fucking nowhere. Like they don't know why it's happening, and they act like you would expect just regular, ordinary people who have serious drinking problems. That's how they act with their powers, right? There's no like with great power comes great responsibility. They're just really weirded out by what's happening to them, and they like abuse their powers. There's like a kid who's invisible and he goes around just like constantly skulking and peeping at women and stealing shit nonstop. Um, there's a cop who can teleport and he just goes mad with power. Oh, fucking loving it. uh, but yeah, it's all set at this dive bar in Hell's Kitchen. And the guy who owns the bar has no powers whatsoever. He's a old dude named Lemon Lemoyne, and he talks with a thick Brooklyn accent. Hey, you guys want to play stickball? You know that kind of thing right there. It's a gorgeous fucking book. It is. It's really beautiful. It really captures like I think what I tell people when I'm pitching it is you can smell the subway on every page of that book. It's really grimy. It's fucking amazing. But yeah, it's been like several years since I wrote that one. Look at Bird still getting DDoSed. Yeah, he can just join on IRC Clown and then they'll stop DDoSing him. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get back to our story, shall we? Yeah, I'm also a big PKD fan. What's my favorite book by him? I think I like his short stories better than any of his novels. I thought The Man in the High Castle was pretty good, but not great. To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep was okie dokie. I love I think my favorite movie that's been made out of one of his things was definitely Minority Report. That one was so well done. And it's been 3 to 4 days of that DDoS on Jewbird, why does he keep like fucking stirring those people up there if he's going to be joining from a host that they can DDoS? You know, at that point, like I blame the victim, honestly. You know, he knows that these people are like the DDoS. Like, why join from an unconnected host? He's just getting zapped left and right. Oh, and I understand like the desire to sort of be defiant and be like, all right, fine, DDoS me, I can take it, but I don't know. He's just giving the people what they want. I think you need to have a mind for the psychology of the people who are attacking you, and like have like some strategy to defeat them, because it's not fun to fucking lose all the time. Shoutouts to Sharon Bonnet and Magic Chords. I just feel so bad for them. It's awful, Freya said, and Miss Diner gave her an understanding look. She'd been talking about the Bhopal disaster with methyl isocate, where methyl isocyanate leaked from an unsafe urine carbide plant, killing thousands. She realized the lesson was about the Bhopal disaster, where methyl isocyanate leaked from an unsafe union carbide plant, killing thousands. Miss Diner, it's wait, how? Miss Diner, yeah. Miss Diner resumed her lesson. Miss Diner resumed her lesson, and Freya paid more attention, relieved she hadn't gotten caught daydreaming. Yeah, there we go. There was a single journalist trying to sound the alarm. His name was Raj Kumar Keswani, the voice in the wilderness for Bhopal. Okay. There was a single journalist trying to sound the alarm. His name was Raj Kumar Keswani. People called him the voice in the wilderness for Bhopal. Many called him a Cassandra. What does it mean to call someone that? The ancient Greeks had a lesson of a woman named Cassandra who was given the gift to see the future, but cursed that no one would believe her warnings. Keswani investigated the dangerous conditions at the plant and published a series of articles about it, but no action was taken. One of them was entitled, "Wake up, people of Bhopal, you are on the edge of a volcano." Okay, and we can't have this italicized, even though normally the title of an article would be italicized. And that's within, that would be within the period, because it's, so just like a weird punctuation note, why didn't my fucking italics de-italic? Oh, I just did the one. Okay, so yeah, just a grammar note here. Single quote goes inside the period because it's part of the statement. Double quote goes outside of the period because typically that's where it is with spoken text. I will tell you, this is like one of the uglier things that you can get in the English language, needing to have a single quote at the end of whatever. Look at this fucking bullshit Navajo Morse code nonsense having right there. All right. So we're not code talkers here. But I'm not going to inject other words to get away from that. It just kind of, I don't like the way that looks. It would be nice if there was a, like a stylized way to do this whole thing, like a, but also I'm not like one of these people that thinks that we need additional, punctuation. Freya's phone hummed in her pocket, but she ignored it, fixated on Miss Diner. After the catastrophe, Keswani was lauded as a hero and showered with awards. In an acceptance speech, he says it was perhaps the first time the award had been given for a spectacular journalistic failure. He said, "Had I succeeded at my task, no one would have taken note." No. Yep, that's where that goes. More than 500,000 people would suffer from the long-term effects of the disaster, such as blindness, breathing problems, stillbirths, and horrific birth defects. To this day, the site is still contaminated and tainting water around it, yet countless people live in the slums surrounding the plant. There's a high school at the corner of the lot, less than 1,000 feet from where the gas was released. There's a high school just like Grayson at the corner of the lot, less than 1,000 feet from where the gas was released. This is all true. There really is like the Indian equivalent of a high school, like sitting right at the corner of that lot. Mm. Man, Jewett has some shitty V hosts. I'm putting it out there. A murmur spread through the class as the last point struck home. Miss Diner did a good job of wrapping her lessons into something they could... Miss Diner always did a good job of wrapping her lessons into something they could relate to. Freya's hand was in her pocket, feeling the starball blazing against her palm, a cold emptiness in her stomach. Interstellar pest control. The day was finally over. Everyone was packing up and she was sitting there trying to put it all together. Miss Diner passed her by and squeezed her shoulder. Passed by Freya and squeezed her shoulder. Take as long as you need, Freya. It's tough to feel so much, she said. Freya lowered her eyes and packed up her things. The only feeling she had... What she was feeling now was like an imposter. She was no journalist, not even a Cassandra. She was only Freya. She'd sold the world without a quibble. Yeah, I don't like the word quibble there. She was only Freya. She'd sold the world. Let's take a look. Well, that's not true. She's definitely given it a second thought. Miss Diner was giving her an uncomfortable stare. Miss Diner was staring. Freya needed to come up with something to say to break the silence. All right, so hello, one of my many inspirations. Wow. Yeah, I would hold back on being inspired by yours truly. There's definitely a dark side to this story. I'm just putting it out there. But in terms of like actually getting out here and do this every morning, we're doing it. You know, we're really out here And you can be out here too. You can do this shit every single day if you want to. So what do we have here? Somebody says, want to become famous by followers, primes, and viewers on this fucking bot thing or whatever here. I hate to break it to you, but that won't make you famous, right? Because I mean, think about it. Say that you see a stream, and I don't know, let's say that 20,000 people are watching that stream, and you click on that stream, and it's just some dude, you know, fucking playing video or whatever, and like he doesn't seem to have anything much interesting to say, and like isn't really attractive or anything. He's not great at a game or whatever. Are you ever gonna click on that thing again? Nah, nigga. You never see that motherfucker again. So you cannot buy fame. It really requires an unusual act. Because I mean, think about it. Like, why else would people talk about something? So I'm with it. The girl who sold the world. Miss Diner was staring. Freya needed to come up with something to break the silence. I knew the Cassandra myth. Is the voice in the wilderness a part of that? I know the Cassandra myth. Is the voice in the wilderness a part of it? Freya asked. No, it's a biblical idiom. Biblical is not capitalized. No, it's a biblical idiom from the book of Isaiah. It's funny. Teaching Cassandra is fine, but Isaiah is taboo. Let me see if I still have it, Miss Diner said, putting 2 fingers on her chin as she searched her memory. There was a light in her eyes when she found what she was looking for. The voice of him crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Her head raised high, her expression superior as she invoked the scripture. Every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, the rough places plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord have spoken it. There was silence in the room afterward. In the silence that followed, Freya saw a flicker of uncertainty in Mrs. Diner's face. She was afraid she'd crossed a line. The presence that had grown so large abated with a crooked smile. The presence that had grown so large as she recited abated with a crooked smile, as if it was all just a joke. Wow, it's really impressive. Do you know the whole thing? Freya said, trying to break up the tension with a compliment. No, but there are a few I had to memorize in Catholic school. That was 30 years ago, but it's still locked up here, she said, tapping the side of her head with the same 2 fingers. Just don't ask me what I had for breakfast, she smiled, and Freya forced a smile of her own as she departed. And Freya forced a smile back as she departed. In the hall, she remembered her phone had buzzed, and she checked it. It was Dan saying he'd pick her up in half an hour. Why not now, she wondered. 1,000 awful reasons why were immediately swirling in her mind. She texted back, Freya, can't wait. Then she went to the bench on the passageway to the arts building with the dead overhead light and did exactly that. The dance studio was empty. Radomir wasn't allowed to teach his class anymore. Ooh. So what do we got here? We used the head tapping thing 2 chapters ago with Lassa. Yeah. Yeah, everybody's like fucking. So here, she does this number, right? That like 2 finger tapping on the chin, and then she uses the same 2 to do that one. That's okay. That mannerism can be repeated. It's a pretty common thing for people to do. So I think we're at chapter 85. Just zipping through this motherfucker. And in terms of pacing, I'm okay. I like that we got to shout out to the Bhopal disaster. It's 83. Then we did chapter 84. Oh, wait, no. That's all part of... how long is chapter 84? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what's this, a shorty? I got it, Dan grinned, holding up a jar of blackcurrant jam as she climbed into a seat. At once she was relieved. He must have gone down to Jericho Market after class. But in his face there was more. She was certain he wasn't telling her everything. She wanted to know, wanted to pry. Freya wanted to know, but she was afraid to find out. Oh, so this line is really like a lot of show, of tell, not show, right? Freya wanted to know, but she was afraid to find out. It does have some value in this context. I think it can stay. It can stay. She would know soon enough. There was an imminence in the air, a spark on every moment that this might be the first and last time for everything. There's so much to say, Freya said. Dan bent over and kissed her. Let's start there, he smiled, and she couldn't help but do the same. Still, she couldn't help but glance around the car, wondering if anyone was watching. She felt like they were being watched. They drove towards Knitting Hill Park to see if the snow had melted on the running track, and she spilled everything about Lassa's research, Radamir's warning, and Lynn Harris. When she spoke about Lassa's idea that the starball might be a kind of culling device for intelligent life, Dan took a deep breath, bracing both hands on the wheel as if he were about to be lashed. Jesus, he breathed. What an idea. I spent a lot of today trying to feel what's me and what's it, trying to figure out if I could break free or if I'd even want to. All we'd have to do is put it in a locker or seal it back in the meteorite, Freya said. Whatever spectrum it's using to control us, metal blocks the transmission. We could stop this whole thing if we wanted to. Do you want to do that? Dan asked, and she shook her head no. She shook her head. I did it once and I felt absolute despair. I never want to feel that way again. I think that's why I can talk about this without being pacified. The starball knows it has me. Can we do anything to help your mother? Freya shook her head again. She'll be out. She's only there for a short period. It's voluntary. Lynn says to just call her when... When they come to question us, we need to call Lynn. I'm pretty much the worst. Oh, yeah, we just... She's only there for a short period. It's voluntary. I'm pretty much the worst daughter possible. You're not, Dan began, and her expression stopped him. I told her about the river, Freya said. For a long moment, Dan held her hand, and she felt she was sliding down a chute. shooting towards some terrible crash. He caught her eyes. In his, there was complete understanding. He'd been there. He caught her eyes and looked back with complete understanding. He'd been there. They were alone in the parking lot. Behind Dan, the shirking sun behind Dan, the shirking sun was giving up the day, combing thin fingers of light through the empty branches of the black willow trees. It was only 4:12 p.m. So there we have shirking. What do we have here? Wow, I don't think it's going to drop down to 609, 600 pages. That's my estimate from what I know about books and how editors like to trim things. So generally, with any book, you can just go through and cut 10%, and it's a better book for it. That's like a rule of thumb for editing. We have not done that. In fact, we might have added 10% to this book. Maybe not quite. I forget how many pages it was when we started, but it definitely wasn't 800. I'll tell you that much right here. Or maybe it was, and we've been in some kind of stasis. If we were smart, we'd be cutting more of this book, because I know we're going to have to do it later. But I just haven't seen much in it that I'm willing to give up with. And that's how it is. So, so people are asking who runs Chat Mom, Chat Cat, Chat Dad. It's a secret cabal trying to take over LRH. Real talk. So here is a question. Behind Dan, the shirking sun was giving up the day, combing thin fingers of light through the empty branches of the black willow trees. That's a pretentious sentence, right? We could turn this to shrinking sun. Or behind Dan, the sun was giving up the day, combing thin fingers of light through the empty branches of the black willow trees. Shirking is, I think, where we potentially overstep our bounds. But I kind of like the word there, so I'm going to keep it. But I just want everybody to be aware that I know that that's a little much and it's pretentious. But let's run, Dan offered. There had been unity on this track before. With every step they sniffed for it, like dogs that had once unexpectedly discovered something good to eat and... With every step they sniffed for it, like dogs that had once discovered something good to eat and never forgot. Love that line, right? Maybe you have to be a dog owner or a dog lover to get this one, but Lord have mercy. If your dog finds like a half-eaten cheese sandwich underneath a bum as you're walking him, he will sniff underneath that bum every single day. Doesn't matter like how many heroin needles his snout gets poked with, he will always look for that half-eaten cheese sandwich. Shoutouts to dogs. The best people on earth. Unspoken between them was the fear that it was over. The magic had fled, never to return. Freya pushed as hard as she could. There was so much to run from. The snow had melted along the inner track, but there were still clumps of The snow had melted along the inner track, but there were still clumps on the outer lanes. The whole track was damp. Their shoes made wet, peeling sounds as they ran, and for the first 20 laps the only conversation was between their sneakers and the synthetic rubber underfoot. Gradually, Freya began to break free from her pack of worries, finding a place in her stride where they didn't matter so much. She caught Dan looking at her and pushed harder. It wasn't unity, but it was something. Pain knocked her out of her hard-won peace, not from her body, but from the starball. It came from the starball, not her body. The orb suddenly pulsed with a heat so intense it felt almost like an electric shock. The orb suddenly pulsed with the most intense heat Freya had ever felt from it. Freya came to an abrupt stop, breathing heavily. It had never done that before. Okay, give me 1 second. Oh my god. Whoa. I stood up and was so lightheaded I almost fell over. I'm really quite sick. But the show must go on. We have to do the book. I'm not willing to or willing. By the way, I'm in New York. It's been 14 days. This could easily be the Corboner virus, and I am quite susceptible to lung diseases. So I'm going to try to finish the book before I die from Wu flu. But if that is the case, I'm counting on people watching the stream to spread my vast works throughout the world, so I'm not forgotten. Although, it won't really bother me if I'm forgotten because I'll be dead. But yeah, I would like for this and my other books to see some wider publication after I do the world the service of dying. So yeah, and also my last wish is to be for my corpse to be thrown in a volcano, and my goods to be distributed to my homie Obsenator and to Big Sloth. Those are the realest ones. Anyhow, I'm pretty sure you can't give your last testament on a Twitch stream, but there it is. Dan had stopped a few strides past her. He turned back around, putting his hand on his hip. He was about to shake it off and start to run again when the starball pulsed a second time. It would not be ignored. Dan looked alarmed. She wondered if she could... Freya wondered if he could feel it too. Something was wrong, and she scanned the darkness for the source. There, Freya said, motioning with a slight incline of her head. There was a black Tahoe parked next to Dan's Toyota. At first, she wondered if the CIA had tracked them down, but the lights were off. Someone was sitting out there in the dark, waiting for them. I didn't see headlights driving up, did you? Dan said. No, Freya said. I think that's Malcolm. Oh, fuck. Everything was in the car. Everything was in the Toyota, their backpacks, their phones, their keys. Dan's eyes were darting around. He was looking for a weapon. Freya's mind left to the rifle in the foyer, the gun in the ottoman. They were all so far away. She was a fool to come here without any way to defend herself. Let's just run away, Freya said. Remembering the first thing Vitko ever taught her. Dan squinted in confusion. What an awful time to have to explain herself. Through the woods, she insisted. Come on. Freya was suddenly very aware that they were standing in the middle of the track with no cover. I didn't lock my car. Dan. I didn't lock my car, Dan protested, still standing still. She could tell he was not quite there. He was always a little loose after running. He has a gun, Freya hissed. The intensity in her voice finally got to him. Dan followed Freya and they ran towards the woods. The snow seemed to get deeper by the step. They vaulted over the chain link fence with yellow private land. Okay, so heard me sniffing and I sound miserable. I'm not miserable. You know, I'm okay. No, speaking of which, time to nad up. Save me, Nad. Yeah, I'm not miserable at all. I just don't feel stellar. I hate crowns. It's called Crayola virus. God. Dan followed Freya as they ran towards the woods and the snow. Dan followed Freya. They ran towards the woods and the snow seemed to get deeper by the step. They vaulted over a chain link fence with the yellow. They vaulted over a chain link fence with yellow private land, no trespassing signs. They vaulted over a chain link fence hung with yellow private land. Yeah, see, they wouldn't. They vaulted over a chain link fence and slogged through the white pines and red maples in the moonlight. Yeah, so, yeah, just pacing wise, you're not going to stop to read a fucking no trespassing sign. So Stratum says, I don't like by the steps. Something in it makes me immediately picture steps location of the step as a geographic thing. Oh, yeah, I see. With every step. Yeah, I think that's actually a really good note. Even though step is looks different, written, it's pronounced the same. So I think mm, mm. The intensity in her voice finally reached him. Dan followed Freya. They ran towards the woods, and the snow seemed to get deeper with every step. They vaulted. Let's try it. Dan followed Freya. Oh, so here. We need to. There's no tension in this, right? I didn't lock my car, Dan protested. Still standing still. Yeah, standing still. She could tell he was not quite there. He was always a little loose after running. Dan, he has a gun, Freya hissed. They began to run away. So I think, yeah, I don't write a lot of pursuit scenes or whatever. They turn. Let's keep going, Freya insisted. Okay, so here we had moonlight in here originally, but we would have to check and see if at like 4:12 p.m. The moon would even be up. It doesn't seem likely that it would rise so early, but the moon does some weird shit. The air was full of snow crunching underfoot and gasping refs. There was a loud pop in the distance, then another. At the second, Freya dragged Dan down onto the ground with her, with the snow burning against her face. She remained motionless, straining her ears against the thunder of her pulse, trying to tell which direction the shots were coming from. She felt a weight on her back. Dan was covering her body with his own. For a few long moments she was pressed against the ground, struggling to breathe. It was impossible to tell. Yeah, so that's a like an interesting point. If you spent like time outside during the winter, it is kind of difficult to tell how distant things are, just because sound travels like way differently when it's cold out. I guess like the atoms are closer together, and so it. All right, give me a second. I'm dying here. Lord have mercy. Oh, God. I want to die just like Jesus Christ. Shout out to the Jesus and Mary Chain, one of my all-time favorite bands. I want to die on a sunny day. I want to die just like JFK. Oh, what a bunch of geniuses. I don't say that uh, mockingly either. I really do think that their lyrics are fantastic. All right, I'm clicking on Subohm's Jiffy Cat. Hopefully it's not. What? What? It's a bird being born. Oh, I hope she's not crushing the shit out of that little guy. Oh, he's out. Well, it's a little bird growing up in a hand. Uh, was it a penguin? I'm looking at them. No, not a penguin. Oh, it's a cockatiel. Oh, that's pretty cute. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was a parakeet all along. So it's a GIF of a parakeet growing from like an egg, a teeny little egg, to a full grown parakeet there. And I was kind of worried that at the very end of this thing, it would show like a tiny little cooked turkey at the end of it. But they didn't go for the big laugh or whatever there. So this is what people tune in for, by the way, hearing me getting distracted and describing GIFs. Mm. Two more pops rang out in the night. It was impossible to tell how far away they were in the winter air. They had to get up, had to keep moving. Freya was sure if they got caught here on the ground, they would be executed. An image flashed into her mind of their bodies sprawled face down in the snow. Red fanned around their heads like halos. We have to move, she hissed. Dan rose and helped her up. They ran in what they hoped was the opposite direction from the shots. Their hands were throbbing. They were wet from cowering in the snow. They struggled forward through the woods for what seemed like forever, and then ran towards the first lights they saw, the windows of a brick house with white trim. A long driveway led up to the brick house. Piled on either side were ramparts of snow. At the end of the line was an ancient Dodge pickup with a plow blade attached. Parked behind it was a short tanker truck. In hand-painted letters on the back of the truck, it read, Earl Mosby, Septic Service. We're number 1 at picking up number 2. The lights they'd seen were from the windows. Inside, a television was flickering against wood-paneled walls. Freya ran up to the door, looking behind them, and she banged on it. Freya ran up to the door and banged on it. Her hand was so numb she could barely feel it. There was a commotion inside, and they saw a face peering out at them through the bay window. A moment later, they were blinded. The man had turned on the floodlights. The man inside the house had turned on the floodlights. The front door opened inward, and Earl Mosby was peering out at them from the entryway. He was a short, hirsute man in boxers and a ratty undershirt. In his left hand, he held a shotgun. The barrel nearly scraped the floor. For a moment, there was just dumb silence, and then two large cats seized their chance and shot out the door between his legs. Behind him, the hockey game was still blaring. The Bears had just scored a goal. Mosby's eyes shot down, tracking the cats as they fled into the night. "Oh, hell," he said. His reactions had been slowed by drink. "What's the matter?" "Someone's chasing us. He has a gun," Freya said. "We need the police." Someone's chasing us. He has a gun, Freya said, out of breath and half panicked. "We need the police." The words shot through Earl Mosby like a jolt of current. His jowls flapped as he quickly shook his head, trying to slough off the 5 tall boys lined in a neat row on the table beside his recliner. Yeah, so we're not really reaching peak drama here. His jowls flapped as he quickly shook his head, trying to slough off the 5 tall boys lined in a neat row on the table beside his recliner. "Come in," he said at once, and they gratefully accepted. He bolted the door behind him. There was a wood-burning stove blazing. It was sweltering inside the house. "Cut off that TV. Get low," Mosby instructed. He was turning on exterior lights and his yard was suddenly lit up. He was turning on more exterior lights and his yard was suddenly lit up. He peered out the window with his back to the wall. Dan shut the television off. "Phone's by the lazy boy," he said, moving window to window and peering out into the dark. Somewhere in Earl Mosby's life there had been trouble. Hunched over, Freya duck-walked to the table with the beer cans and grabbed the phone. It was an ancient Nokia brick that had seen so much use the letters were completely worn off the buttons. She dialed 911 and explained what had happened. She asked Earl Mosby for his address. She had to call out to Earl Mosby for his address. It was 431 Micmac Trail. As Freya held for the dispatch, there was a terse silence. As Freya held for the police dispatch, there was a terse silence in the house. Earl was stealing glances out the window, then covering behind the wall. Soon, there was an insistent meowing from the front door. Earl walked over and cracked the door wide enough for the cats to get in, but they only stood outside, looking in. He shut the door, waited a few moments, and then opened it again. At last, the cats deigned to come back inside. It had the feeling of a scene that had played out many, many times. "She says the police will be here in 10 minutes, Freya announced, when the emergency operator let her go. "I don't figure these knuckleheads would come back if there was some maniac out there. You said Jokla on the phone, right? You're Randy's little girl?" Freya could only nod. The tension in her stomach twisted another turn. She really couldn't handle this right now. "I'm sorry as hell. He was a good man, great shooter." Earl looked down at the gun in his hands. "Oh, at pool, I mean. I must have faced him 20 times at the weekly 9-ball thing at Quay's. Never won one. Is this related?" Freya shook her head, overcome. "It's a stalker." "A guy's stalking her. His name's Malcolm Lewis," Dan said, seeing Freya's look. "I read about that in the Sentinel. That's the basketball player that beat up the ballerina, right? Yeah, that guy. He's a real piece of shit. Thank you for letting us in. Sorry to bring this on you. No trouble at all. 10 minutes passed, and then another 10 with no police in sight. Okay. So right away. Oh, what do we have here? Day 65 of writing. Yeah, we've been, so this is Dick Dickinson, 666. Yeah, so we've been editing this book for the last 65 days straight, and we have not missed a single day. And I'm slowly going mad. And unfortunately, it's not a very good chapter. Like, there's no tension if our goal was for tension. There's all these places where we, like, release tension on the scene. Oh, we're gonna have to take another pass at this guy. I can tell already. I'm like about to fucking fall over here. 10 minutes passed, then another 10 with no police in sight. Freya and Dan clustered close to the wood stove, practically baking themselves to get the throbbing out of their fingers and toes. There were cobwebs in all the corners of the house. The floors hadn't seen a mop in quite some time. Earl was filled with a kind of nervous, talkative energy as he made the circuit of his windows with the shotgun. He asked a lot of questions and offered them some of the chili bubbling in the crock-pot in the kitchen. Freya thanked him, but said she didn't think she could keep anything down, and he offered them a slug of whiskey to settle things. Again, they begged off. Eventually, the cats decided to investigate the strangers in their midst and came up to butt their heads against Dan's legs. They sniffed at Freya when she held out her hand for them. Even cats like him better. One was black, the other was calico, with black rings around his eyes that made him look mischievous. He's Han, and she's Dink. Earl pointed from one to the other. You'd never seen a dumber pair of creatures on God's green earth. At the sound of his voice, the cats each tilted their heads, as if they were rolling their eyes at them, and they resumed trying to untie Dan's shoes. Cut it out, you two. Christ, Earl said. And the cats scattered to the kitchen and began meowing again. I already fed you, he called back, and the cats were quiet. The cats were quiet for a moment before starting up again. Can't stand them, he groused unconvincingly. They were my wife's. He gestured to the wall. Earl. Can't stand them, Earl groused unconvincingly. They were my wife's. He gestured to a shelf on the far wall. There were a dozen framed photographs of a woman who favored wearing green. Freya walked over to take a look, and once she noticed there wasn't a single smudge or fingerprint on any picture, nor a speck of dust or hair of cat anywhere on the shelf. So that's weird, the way that sounds. Day 65 of editing. Yeah, this is my book. This is my 8th novel. It's entitled GRAVID. It's a science fiction piece. And we're pretty deep into it right here. Pardon me a moment. What? That's the wrong fucking button to hit right there. Good God. Nope. Yeah, we're real fancy over here. Oh, I'm dying. Well, that's what happens when you pledge that you're going to do something straight for like many days. So Restream.io. Congratulations. I've received 100 messages today with a Restream chat. So it's like a creepy jump scare. Yeah, my bad. I hit the wrong button. Oh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know what arc time is. But what do we have here? Freya walked over to take a look, and once she noticed there wasn't a single smudge or fingerprint on any picture, nor a speck of dust or hair of cat anywhere on the shelf. The photographs were lined up chronologically, starting with one that must have been their senior prom. The top of Earl's head just barely reached her corsage. The top of Earl's head just barely reached the woman's corsage. With a full head of hair, Earl was beaming like he'd just won the Stanley Cup. They progressed down the row, the two of them on a fishing boat, one in front of the Eiffel Tower, another somewhere tropical. In the last picture, the woman was terribly thin, and there was a green silk scarf. Uh, oh, this is why. How did I originally have this written? In the last picture, the woman was terribly thin. Wrapped around her missing hair like a turban. They were inside of a cathedral that Freya felt sure she'd visited. She struggled to place it until she noticed the Tom Otterness sculptures hiding in the niches. St. John the Divine, Freya said, and Earl nodded. Always liked that church. That's my Marine. Cancer got her. Sorry, Freya said. Ain't we all, Earl replied. The police took another 15 minutes to arrive. Alternate reality game. They're like mystery quests created by individuals for other people to solve. That random thing gave me ARG vibes. Huh. Yeah, wild. Oh, yeah, I have like a background in like D&D and stuff like that. Okay. So let's think a little bit about this chapter. So already I'm going to put a final. We probably need to rewrite this one, right? So the issues that I have with this guy are... so here's chapter 85. So final... So the final thing there is there's no real sense of like rising tension. We just release the valve in several different places, and I think it does a disservice to the idea of building the sense that they're being pursued by someone. And I'll tell you, like, not to... Well, we'll get to it in the next scene, but you'll see why we're a little bit hamstrung in adding additional tension. So it is weird that they got like a direct warning from the Starball. That hasn't really happened before. So it's one of the first times where it's directly communicating. So... Uh, so yeah, I'm not happy at all with chapter 85 so far, but I'm sick, so I'm not playing with a full fucking deck here. I like a lot of the things that this chapter is doing. I do like Earl Mosby as a character, but I think we go a little too hard at like a caricature with this dude. Like he's like a little bit too comedic, and I don't think that that's super smart here. So yeah, we have to take another look at this right here. Let me see what comment I put here. Yeah, that's like a stealthy comment. Oh, cool. So we're gonna take these out of there. Because I think we chose to break this chapter somewhere. So here's chapter 86. What do we have here? Yeah. Chapter 86. It was impossible to thank Earl Mosby enough, but they tried anyway. Even the police were full of praise. Earl seemed almost bashful, but perhaps it was only the beer. Would he remember this tomorrow, or decide it had all been a dream? The little shrine on his shelf dug into Freya like a nail. Those pictures in a line as straight as a ruler, that terrible progression. A good man, drinking himself away, and she didn't blame him one bit. You only get one. Freya tightened her grip on Dan's hand. Freya tightened her grip on Dan's hand. They were in the back of a police car headed for Nading Hill Park, driving with a jovial, heavy-set policeman. The driver was a jovial, heavy-set policeman who'd introduced himself as Officer Kimber. So, we may have to change Kimber, because I think that's the type of gun that Randall has. There were more lights flashing when they approached. A police SUV and another patrol car were there. Freya could see a flashlight bobbling along the chain-link fence they'd leapt over. When they saw the car, Freya and Dan gasped in unison. Dan's Toyota sat on 4 flat tires. In the headlights of the police car, the snow around the car glittered. In the police headlights, the snow around the car glittered. We specify police headlights there because otherwise you start thinking that they're the headlights of the Toyota. In the police cruiser's headlights, the snow around the car glittered with blue-green cubes of auto glass and crimson shards of tail light. Every window had been shattered. The front and rear windshields were caved in. The roof was collapsed. It looked like someone had jumped up and down on it. Even the side panels were bent, and there were big dents where someone had smashed them with the back of an axe or a sledgehammer. "Wow," Officer Kimber said. "Somebody's mad." Freya felt a jab of anger that he was still joking around. This is all happening because the Silas Police Department couldn't catch a high school student. "Rest in pieces," Dan joked back. "It's Toyotaled." "That's god-awful," Kimber snorted. "Did you have comprehensive insurance?" Dan shook his head. "Just liability." "Shit," Officer Kimber said, and he sucked in air through his teeth. The policewoman walking around the fence was Officer Martin. She stopped by to say hello. She seemed less keyed up tonight. Her eyeliner was a little more restrained, and Freya wondered if someone had said something to her. When she spoke with him, Freya could tell she was frustrated they hadn't caught Malcolm yet. As Freya looked around the parking lot, she counted 9 police. It was close to the entire Silas Police Department. Freya watched Dan's face as they were filling out the paperwork, searching for anger or fear, but she couldn't find either. It was a little alarming that she couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell how he felt. "Are you okay?" she asked, when they were finally through with their paperwork. He looked almost serene. "I'm okay," he said. She gestured to the broken car, inviting him to talk about how he felt. "It was a mercy killing," Dan joked, but Freya didn't laugh. Her hand gripped the starball in her pocket, wishing for unity. She was terribly afraid that Dan blamed her, that this would drive them apart. And this would drive them apart. With her eyes, she implored. She stared at Dan, silently imploring him to open up. He caught her look and his bottom lip grew tight. "Honestly, I'll probably be mad later. But right now I'm just glad we're alive, Dan said, and she could see the touch of gravity on his features. She could remember the feeling of being crushed into the snow as he shielded her with his body. I'm sorry, she said, and he shook his head. I got you in so much bullshit. Stop that, he said. Toyota. I do like that. It's fucking ridiculous. So we want something like commanded, but commanded is the wrong word. Told is exactly the level of command that we want. Not ordered, not commanded, not asked. Told. Stop that, Dan told Freya. His voice was suddenly adult, correcting a child. You know this isn't your fault. Freya was stunned for a moment by his rebuke. Freya was stunned by Dan's rebuke. It was the first time he'd ever taken that tone with her, and it hurt. For a moment she was angry. How could he do that to her? He was supposed to be on her side. But as she stood in the freezing parking lot, her mouth became a tight line, and she gave a single nod of acceptance. Dan was right. She was acting maudlin. I hope the jam isn't ruined, Freya said. She wanted the night they'd planned back, making cookies and making love. It was impossible now. Dan's eyes lit up. Oh. Mentioning the jam reminded Dan of something. His eyes lit up. Oh. Are our backpacks still in the car? Dan said, with sudden excitement in his voice. The excitement in his voice seemed out of place. They are. As soon as we're done processing for fingerprints, I'll bring them to you, Officer Kimber promised. He'd been rotating between helping on the scene and coming into the car to thaw. Into the patrol car to thaw. We found some blood on the vehicle in the snow. Looks like he snagged himself on a sharp edge. That's great news. We can get positive ID off of DNA. We didn't find any casings. Potentially, any shots you heard were just him popping your tires. If we find any, we'll likely charge him with attempted murder. Freya thought about it for a second. There wouldn't be casings. He's got a revolver, Freya said. Ooh, good point, Kimber said. Dan turned to... Revolvers don't eject casings. They stay in the cylinder until you reload, Freya explained. So everybody is head tapping here. This is 32,000 infected in China. We got one infected in New York right here. Got that Wu flu. I kept calling it bat flu yesterday, and everybody was looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, they're just not following it at all. Oh God, Jubert giving spoilers about Picard. I haven't watched any of it, so I can't tell. Smart one. Kimber tapped twice on the side of his head with his index finger and pointed at Freya with a nod. Jan chatted with him for a bit, and Freya was relieved he didn't bring up Randall. They learned Kimber was previously a state trooper until he got sick of writing speeding tickets. He'd moved to the Silas PD a few months ago and was enjoying the town so far. Freya realized there was a good chance he was Randall's replacement. The thought was a stone in her stomach. She was glad when he left them again. Dan turned to her, eyebrows high. It warned us, Dan said. when they were on their own. Freya shot him an alarmed look, putting a finger over her mouth and pointing at the dashboard. In the cluster of equipment, there was almost certainly a camera recording them. Dan covered his mouth with his hand. "Oh, fuck," he blurted. "Later," she promised, squeezing his hand, getting a laugh from him. When they were through processing the car, Officer Kimber brought over their backpacks, warning them to watch out for bits of glass and apologizing for the fingerprint powder that got on everything. The jar of blackcurrant jam was smudged by powder, but intact. Their backpacks had been opened up and pawed through. She saw a flicker of alarm on Dan's face. He searched through the backpack and she saw sudden relief when he found something. "What is it?" Freya asked. He hesitated a moment, but then made up his mind. "I was going to wait till later, but it feels like it might hit us at any time. Here." Dan produced a pretty little box and handed it to her, watching her intently. Shiny silver paper was decorated with curlicues that faded from turquoise to indigo. She recognized the style. It had come from the Van Twisk. Shoutouts to Matthias Van Twisk, by the way. He knows who I'm talking about. It had come from the Van Twist Gallery on Main Street, next door to the Jericho Market. A gift was the absolute last thing she'd expected to happen tonight. When she opened the box, she saw gold glittering in the faint dome light. At the end of a delicate chain was an antique-style locket, engraved with a swallow in flight. Freya took a deep breath and squeezed Dan's arm in excitement. "How did you do this? It's perfect." "Open it," he said, beaming. Inside was a picture of the two of them from the night they'd gone to see Mr. Mathis play at Swallow Hall. They were all dressed up. Freya was laughing at something Ricky Gardner had said. "Ooh, Ricky Gardner. We changed Ricky Gardner's name. Yeah, he was Riley Gardner for a second there. Okay, so this is page 677 that we have to come back to. And then we can look for... Okay, take a ticker. Had a maroon fez. We called him Guy. Guy Wright is what we changed Ricky Gardner to. I think it was Riley Gardner, then it became Ricky Gardner. Yeah, there are two Rickies. Okay, where's the other Ricky? No other Rickies. Cool. Let's turn off match case, just in case. Oh, tricky. It's tricky to rock around the rock around. All right, so let's go back to... All right. Oh, wait, we're actually on 86 there. That's fine. We'll just zoom ahead. I forgot what page number I said after talking about how I could remember things I said a little bit better, but I'm sick. Toyoted. I'll all a little bit of every time that I see that. Dan's face was turned to her. Even in the tiny picture, it was plain he adored her. Dan was looking at her in the photo. Even in the tiny picture, it was plain he adored her. Her eyes were suddenly hot. "I love you," she said, throwing her arms around Dan and kissing him in the back of the police car. "I can't believe I got away with that. If you felt me trying to hide anything the last few days, it was that. It was so hard not to think about it." That's amazing. This is amazing. Where did you get the picture?" "I emailed Swallow Hall, and they put me in touch with a photographer. He was super nice. I was only going to get it framed, but when I saw the locket, I knew it was right." "You're wonderful. I'll never take it off," Freya promised as she put it around her neck. "As long as everything else comes off, I'm okay with that," he grinned. She pulled him closer, and they kissed until there was a tap at the window. "Ahem." Officer Kimber coughed into his fist after he opened the door. "Sorry to intrude, but let's have a quick chat." That was how he dropped bad news. Freya could tell immediately she wasn't going to like what he had to say. So we still haven't been able to get in touch with your mother, he trailed. She's probably in the lab. They aren't allowed phones in there, Freya lied. Okay, and there's no other relatives available, correct? That's right. Well, we're not too excited about the prospect of you home alone with this individual not in custody. We're going to bring you back to the station until we can get in touch with your mom. Like in a cell? Not in a cell, just at the station. There's a credible threat to your life. Immediately, she felt a pang of aversion. She could envision them processing her, taking her wallet and keys, a policeman's eyes locking on the starball as he reached for it. What's this? Okay, well, thank you, but no, I definitely don't want to do that, Freya said abruptly. Well, hear me out here. You're a minor. We may opt to request you come along anyway. You're in danger, and we feel it would be best. Immediately, all the veneer of friendliness was stripping away, and she was aware that this was a man with a gun who could compel her to do things she didn't want to do. She slid back on her seat, away from him, and he didn't miss the motion. You're saying request, but it would be an order. You'll bring me in whether I want to go or not. We do have that option, but we would much prefer if we were all on the same page. Okay, let me make a call real quick, okay? I just need to check on something. Sure, no problem at all. Freya called Lynn Harris. Damn. Insert Reese screaming on the videotape from the Terminator here. God, I don't think we go quite that far. Lynn Harris's arrival swept across the police like an ill omen. Their postures stiffened and they glanced at each other and muttered. Freya tried to get out of the car to join her, only to find the door was locked. They had to watch Lynn operate through the window. Officer Kimber's posture was all raised palms and surrenders. She saw Officer Martin say something and Lynn wheeled on her, her eyes flashing and eager. Freya couldn't make out the words through the glass. She could only hear the tempo of the delivery. The sentences struck, jab, jab, cross, and Martin was left stunned, blinking her slightly less cartoonish eyes. That doesn't work. I'm blinking around it. Blinking like she wasn't sure what had just happened. With the slightest baring of her teeth, Lynn dismantled the plot to hold Freya at the police station. They were freed from the back of the police car. They locked us in, Freya hissed when they were in Lynn's car. That's why I'm here, Lynn said. Her voice was tight with exhilaration. Compounding their inept handling of a stalking case by imprisoning the victim. It's a farce. Freya was about to apologize for dragging her out so late, but this was what Lynn lived for. How'd you get them to let us go? Power of attorney, Lynn said, holding up a fist. It's a real-life superpower. Will Malcolm have to pay for my car? I don't have good insurance, Dan asked. Eventually, yes. I'm going to tear him apart in civil court. He'll never cash an ungarnished paycheck for the rest of his life. So here, we have a note where I know I need to consult with a lawyer for how this would actually work out. And because I can't afford a lawyer, my thought was that I would pose as somebody who had a similar case and then just see what the lawyer told me in terms of advice. Things you have to do when you're fucking broke, man. Shout outs to planning to defraud a lawyer and then just revealing it here on the stream or whatever. I don't know how much of a crime that is. Like, just soliciting free legal advice by calling up a lawyer. But I'm definitely going to do that. That'll be fun. Yeah, that's how I intend to do most of the legal research, by the way. Just being like, do you think we have a case? I'm sure that won't even work. Can you do that? Oh, yes. It's rare to get punitive damages on a tort in Maine, but I'll have zero issue proving malice. I will destroy him. Lynn's voice was like a drawn blade, and Dan was staring at her, seeing she'd shown too much. Lynn took a steadying breath and ran her hand through her hair. We can worry about all that later. Let's focus on the immediate problem. We need to get you to your mother, Daniel. When I speak with her, I'm going to suggest the two of you spend the night in the hotel. Freya blinked. She hadn't even thought about that yet. Of course, she couldn't go home. Malcolm knew where she lived. She couldn't get the gun or her guitar or a change of clothes. Dan couldn't drive to work or school. Would he lose his job over this? Lynn's eagerness to crush Malcolm didn't seem so bloodthirsty anymore. Lynn drove them to Flying Horse Regional Hospital, and they waited for Dan's mother in the ER waiting room. There were 4 people waiting to be seen, and Freya couldn't see what was wrong with any of them. She was acutely aware she was taking time away from people who actually needed help. I could have been shot. I could have come here in an ambulance, Freya reminded herself, but the thought could not find purchase. They paged Dan's mother and waited in the room that smelled of chemicals and desperation. Samantha Gregulus was thin and severe. Her eyebrows were black, but her hair had gone completely gray. It was tucked back in a neat, tight. It was tucked back in a neat. She wore it tucked back in a tight bun. Are any of you hurt? Samantha's eyes were darting all over the 3 of them, looking for signs of injury. Dan apologized for bothering at work. They told her no. Dan apologized for bothering her at work, then introduced Lynn and Freya. He told her the whole story, even the part about Earl Mosby's cats. Freya noticed Samantha didn't ask questions until Dan had finished. She only nodded to indicate she was following along. It was easy to see she'd done this thousands of times. Lassa would have interrupted a dozen times by now. When the cops took us back to the car, it was completely trash. They wanted to keep Freya at the station for the night, but Lynn stopped them. They locked us in the back of the police car. Samantha's frown was all eyebrows. Her polite smile never changed. How bad is your car? Dan showed her the pictures on his phone. I'm surprised, Samantha said. I didn't think that car could look any worse. They were all so intent it took them a second to realize it was a joke. Dan got it first and laughed out loud, like there was no weight on him. Freya could only manage a nervous smile. Samantha had more questions, mostly practical legal ones for Lynn about what they should and shouldn't do. The whole time Freya was standing there helpless. There were no apology cookies. There was no way to make this right. It became increasingly difficult not to cry. Freya clenched her jaw and fought it back, determined not to look weak in front of Dan's mother. Suddenly, Samantha's gaze was on Freya. I'm really, really sorry for all of this, and for us missing school on Monday. That's totally my fault. It won't happen again. I'm sorry we had to meet this way, Freya blurted. She bottled everything for too long, and it all came out in a rush of words. She'd bottled it for too long, and it all came out in a rush of words. Everyone could see she was upset. She felt like her apology had come across as a childish outburst. Thank you for saying that, Samantha said. All that matters is that you're both okay. Don't worry about anything else. Thank you for saying that. Beneath her clinical smile, because Samantha was still furious with her. Beneath her clinical smile, Samantha was still furious with Freya. There was nothing to do except try to make it through the conversation without bursting into tears, which Freya barely managed. When it was over, Samantha had agreed to Lynn's advice, and they were going to get a hotel room for the night. Freya offered to pay for their hotel, but Samantha refused, seeming vaguely insulted. Dan was going to stay at the hospital until the end of her shift. She had another 2 hours to go and had already long overstayed her break. She gave Dan a tight hug and thanked Lynn, then hustled back to the ER, ignoring Freya completely. Wow, okay, Freya said. She'll come around, Dan promised. He followed her out into the parking lot to hug her goodbye. Hey, it's okay. Hey, it's okay, he said when he felt her shaking, making cookies and making love. Now everything was broken. I'll text you, okay? We can talk about everything tomorrow, Dan promised. It felt like it had been years since they were one. She hugged him for as long as she could. Damn. All right, so the Earl Mosby scene was bad, but these scenes are good scenes. I like where all of this is going quite a bit. I like Samantha Gregulis being kind of a cunt. 86. And I think it's reasonable that she would be kind of a cunt. So this is chapter 87 now. Good God, we're getting close to it. Okay, so we're at 684. We're actually almost 35 pages above where we need to be at there. Let's see how long the Starball chapter is. I feel really lightheaded. It's 2 pages. Let's go through it. Starball. I have made so many mistakes. I drank too deep, heedless of the ripples I made in the pool. Now the beasts are circling, alert to my scent. Can they follow my trail? They've captured my most powerful proxy. They're holding her in a prison for defectives. Jailers question her, trying to learn if she is a defective too. If they decide she is, they will never let her go. Yet she is confident. Interrogation is her element. She needs no assistance from me. Her replies are studied. Her poise is total. She understands the way they are working on her, and she is working them back, operating at a level above theirs. Though it is beneath me, I cannot help but feel a glimmer of pride when she defeats them. She is so important to my plan. Can I even reconfigure without her? The governor's unease churns endlessly. The firmament is shaking itself apart. It was aghast at my warning to Freya, that I could sense the aggressor's arrival through the signal from his communicator's radiation. Oh, yeah, this is... Okay, yeah. We're actually going to stop here because I have... yeah, we're going to start right back here. The next time I may be able to edit, because I have some mechanical things to fix in this story. Like, so far, I've been trying to keep spoilers out of the story right here, but mechanically... that determine outcome. Mechanical decisions must be made in this chapter that determine outcome. Okay. So we're required... Oh, what do we have here? RIP. Yeah, so we only have like almost like 100 pages left to the end right here. I may try to power through some more of this weekend. How long have we been going here? What's our uptime? It doesn't really matter because I'm like kind of half floating at the moment here. But yeah, in this chapter, we need to make some specific changes on a rewrite level. So this is going to take full command of my faculties. And I'll give a spoiler warning for people who do not want to find out parts of the big reveal. But yeah, there are some in this chapter. So yeah, let's think about where we're at. I think we need to go back and work more on chapter 85. Right, so I'm gonna post us back to there. Yeah, and if you were listening here, I'm gonna start the next time that we're here. So we're still 10 pages ahead. We've just done like a little bit of good work on the other ones there. If you read through chapter 85, definitely looking for feedback on this guy. I think what I'll probably try to do in the rewrite is just make it like a little bit more tense. We'll remove some of the comedic elements out of it, and just try to make it more like hey, somebody with a gun might be pursuing us, because I don't think it does a good job of injecting some tension. And there are so few scenes in this book that have any kind of like real dramatic, like, oh, are our characters in danger and so forth. So this is I can just identify this as a problem right here. Okay, well, that is going to be it for this stream. There's a very real chance that if I feel better, I will do an additional stream later today. Thank you all for joining and being a part of this, and we'll have more potentially later, but probably not. Probably not. Like the way that I'm feeling right now, I may just go back to sleep, but I would like to get some more done. So I'm as for fans of the other show tonight, I'm gonna post a just a warning that if I don't feel well, we may postpone the show to Sunday or something like that, so I feel better. All right, later, y'all.